the view from our apartment and looking out over the playground. It's a little bit cooler today than usual, which is nice. That means fall's coming. And today we're going to be making a latte, the morning latte. So we got that going on. So you get to join in and see what we got going on. Let's see if we can get this. I think I'm in frame. That'll work. And let's see, maybe just a tiny tilt up. So anyway, that is what we got going on. We're doing the morning latte, and here in Korea, live, in case you're wondering. I had some more people ask me why we retired in Korea, and it's like, well, couldn't find any other places that we wanted to go, so Korea ended up being a good location, and part of that had to deal with the wife being Korean. She was born and raised Korea, and then we got married as well. I was over here during the military, and the wife is awesome as usual. So we got that going on. And then we found out actually, because we were looking at Thailand, we were looking at Puerto Rico, Costa Rica. There's a couple of other places that we were looking at, but nothing really clicked. So we had that. Today we are rocking a medium blend. So in case you're wondering there, it's a medium blend, and this actually is a company. That's the last little bit we have. Oh no, we're gonna have to order some more. So, oh no. The good thing is these beans that we're using is locally roasted, so it'll take like 2 or 3 days and we can get that. It's gonna be a little noisy. So yeah, that's what we got going on. But yeah, it just ended up we didn't want to jump into the wild unknown. Go to like a different country. We had been to Thailand and a couple other places, but as far as like retirement, we didn't just jump off into a place where we didn't know anybody. So there's kind of that came involved. I think today we'll do a hazelnut. And so that had something to do with our decision to retire in Korea. The other thing was work sucked. Work sucked. And working the type of jobs that I was working, I did a career in the military, which was pretty stressful. And then worked in law enforcement, worked corrections, ended up as a firearms instructor, contractor, did stuff like that, and then upscale security. And all of these high pressure jobs, I just ended up working because I was really good at it. That's part of it right there. But it was just it got to the point of working for the state of Colorado. It was just such a soul sucking job. And while the benefits were good, the pay was good, the working conditions and the stress, not so good. And then I remember the day that I quit, which was probably one of the best days that I had. It was funny because the day that I quit, it ended up, I've been planning to quit, and I was actually going to quit the same time that my boss had retired, and that would kind of leave the prison. I was working in a prison at the time, would kind of leave them in a lurch, but really it doesn't, because you're just a number. And I had two people yelling at me, telling me how to do my job when they themselves didn't know how to do my job. And it's like, well, this is how it is. I'm like, no, that's not how it goes. That's not how the appropriations goes. That's not how you do the bids for the equipment and this and that and all that other stuff. And I had an existential moment, to be honest with you. I had an existential moment, and my consciousness came out of my body, and I saw myself from above, and the two people that were arguing with me that didn't know what they were talking about, and I could see myself, and it's like, this isn't worth it. I quit. And it kind of held on there for a moment, and then boom, I came back into my body, and next thing you know, it's like I said, I quit. I'm done. And I'm just like, it was almost like on autopilot. That was the funny thing. Ooh, that's going to be good. Yeah, that's a good pull. So it ends up, it said, I quit, I'm done. And, you know, these two people are still arguing with me. And I'm like, no, I'm done. And it's like I was on autopilot. I started putting my tools away, and it was hilarious, because as I'm putting my tools away, I'm not finished with my work. So it's like, you know, it's kind of a weird thing. It's like, it was in the morning. It was prior to lunch, I think it was, or just shortly after lunch. So I still had a lot of work to do. We had a big project, and I'm putting my tools away, and I'm like, and again, it's kind of like I'm outside of myself, and it ends up, it was like, okay, let's see if we can get this a little closer. No, guess not. So, yeah, I see myself outside of myself, putting my tools away, and you get this quizzled look on this captain that was talking to me, and this other lieutenant. And, you know, they're still arguing. I said, no, I quit, I'm done. And each time I said it, it was like, I'm done, I'm done, I'm done, I'm done. You don't understand, I am done. It was like, it was incredible. So, yeah, I put my tools away, and I said, no, you don't understand, I am done, I quit. And then it was at that moment that it ended up, there was such a huge weight off of my shoulder. Now, you have to remember that I was working for the state of Colorado and working corrections in a medium R restricted facility, so rapists and murderers and all those types of people. Inmates are going to be inmates, and you can count on them to be the same. So they're going to try to run a scam on you. They're going to try to get over on you. There's some good guys there that made bad mistakes and made bad choices. Not mistakes, made bad choices. But the worst part was the staff. So as I'm putting my tools away, it's like, no, I quit. And it's like, you know, this would be like the second time that I had ever done something like this. The other time was with the plant manager, but I didn't quit. I just said, I'm taking a mental health day off. Because the plant manager was such a tool, and it was like, so it ends up, yeah, I put my tools away and everything, and let's see if I can get this going. I gotta practice my frothing of milk. I got to get better at that. So anyway, yeah, it was the other time, and I took a day off because the plant manager was being a tool, and he didn't even know how to use a multimeter. He used to, but yeah, he was like having us redo something because the IT department was saying it was impossible, and the problem must have been on our side. even though that we showed that that wasn't the case. So yeah, it was just kind of a crazy thing. But in this case, yeah, I packed up my tools. I ended up going back to the shop. I inventoried all my tools because you have to inventory your tools before and after you go out anywhere with tools in a prison. And I signed everything back in. I went to the trash and I got the big trash dumpster, and I got a box, and I went to my desk and started putting stuff in the box, all my personal items. And I had been there, almost 11 years? 10, 11 years, something like that. Do a little bit more about this. So, yeah, it was quite the deal. And I had this smile on my face. It was like an unbelievable thing that we had going on. And like I said, the weight had lifted from my shoulders. It was pretty good. It was actually pretty good. And then, so I'm doing that, and a couple other people from the shop had stopped in, and they're like, "Hey, what's going on?" I said, "Yeah, I'm done. I quit." And they're like, "Oh, you're done for the day?" I said, "No, I quit. I'm done." And it's like, whoa. So it was pretty crazy on how all that went. And then, after I packed up the stuff from my desk, which, I had like one box for the personal stuff in my desk, I ended up, I said, you know what, I'm going to go around, I'm going to say goodbye to some people, and then I'll come back, I'll get the box, and I'll head out. So by that time, my boss had come up because he was there, and he saw the whole thing, and he's like, now the problem with my boss is that he relied heavily on me. So it was kind of like, which would mean he would have to do a lot of the work, which I was on call. I would get the majority of the on-call time. And, he would be at home, he would be on fishing trips and stuff. And so, he really used and abused me a lot. So we had that going on. And then, that put him in a lurch. And he's pretty selfish, So anyway, it was just kind of a crazy thing that we had going on. And so I went around and I saw a few people that I wanted to say goodbye to and say, hey, I'm done. This is, I'm not doing this anymore. Let me see if I can do a little bit of a coffee art thing here. Let's see. Boom, 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 boom. And let's see if we can get you in on this. I think it's good enough. So it ends up that I went around, said goodbye to people, and people didn't recognize me. Here's the strange thing. I went up to people and they're like, I had this one guy, and we were pretty good friends, and I come up to him and he's like looking at me and he's like, this puzzled look, like, something seriously is off. And the funny thing was, I got up to him and I said, hey man, John, what's up? Boom. And he's like, I didn't recognize you. You were smiling. He goes, you're still smiling. What's going on? And I was like, I quit. So I went out and said goodbye to everybody, went back to the shop, got my box, proceeded to go to master control. I turned in my handcuffs, my OC, all of my stuff, my keys, I turned those in. The plant manager at that time, not the one that I used to have problems with, this guy was actually a good plant manager. And there's a story about the old plant manager. He hated guns, he didn't like the Second Amendment, And then he said he'd rather have dollars than all the gold in the world. He was just an odd duck. And so anyway, he ended up dying. He ended up having cancer. He died. They had a big funeral for him, and it was out of duty hours and in civilian clothes. So I'm in nice civilian clothes, and I'm carrying my gun at this funeral. And it's like, hey, you can't wear that. And it's like, excuse me, I'm a private citizen attending a funeral, and yeah, I'm going to wear this whether you like it or not. So the last little thing was kind of a little dig on him. But yeah, I got in trouble for that. It was, even though it was a civilian thing. Let me see if I can get a good view of this. And I think we're in frame there. We're gonna try to do a little bit of a latte, not really a latte art thing, but we'll just give it a shot and see what happens. It'd be nicer if I had a thinner spout on this, but maybe I'll get one. You might think, ooh, he can barely do lines. But this is where the magic comes in. So just kind of do some swirls here. And we'll kind of bring it in like that. And we'll just do some little heart shapes. That's about as artsy as I get with the with the latte art. So yeah, that's as good as it gets. So now the test. Oh, that is good. I like that little bit of chocolate in there. I guess we could set down here. And we'll continue on with the story hour. Kind of get this so everything's set in place. Pardon the movement. Don't mean to make you seasick. So anyway, it ends up. Yeah. So I go, and the cool plant manager, stops me and pulls me into his office. He goes, "Hey, so what's going on?" And it's like, I told him, I said, you know what, I'm done. And he knew the work that I did. And I was pretty reliable. Like I said, I was on call for the majority of the time. When there was problems that would arise after hours with critical systems within the prison that were electronics, like control panels, the things that keep the doors closed in the cells and all that stuff. Stun fences, security systems, camera systems. We had almost 1,000 cameras in the facility, and if cameras go down, ooh, the end of the world. We had cameras where if you touch the stun fence, you get stunned with like 50 or 80,000 volts, and then cameras would like and kind of zoom in to wherever that zone or sector was activated. And yeah, I did all that stuff. So anyway, it ends up, he's like, so Steve, what's going on? And it's like, yeah, I'm done. I've had enough. I had like 11 years in. And for me I couldn't retire until I was like almost 70, because the state of Colorado had this weird law where the number of years that you work plus the age that you are, then you could qualify for pension. So me knowing that wouldn't happen, I elected to go for kind of like a 401k thing. So because I knew, but even then, you're still going to have to work until you're almost 70 to be able to get some significant money in there. And it just, the returns in Colorado para and stuff like that, a lot of problems with that. So that's a whole nother can of worms there. So anyway, I told him, I said, yeah, I'm done. I just can't do this anymore. It was not only was it affecting my mental health, and then I was having problems with PTSD and all the military stuff and law enforcement stuff, and I wasn't treating myself. The VA was terrible back then, and crappy doctors, um, just horrible, horrible. And it was affecting my family life. So not only was it affecting me, my family life, and it was getting to a point of where it was getting really, really dark. It had gotten super dark over the years. And a number of times where it was like, yeah, really, really dark. I'll just leave it at that. And, it got to the point of where it's like looking at retirement, and it's looking at the expenses that we had. And it was like, I'm not going to be able to retire until I'm like 70. And then, even then, it's like, how many years am I going to live after that? 75, 80 years, and then what type of retirement is that? If I didn't have a heart attack at work, which there's a number of people that had heart attacks at work. I remember one guy, he had a heart attack while he's sitting and eating lunch in a prison cafeteria, a dining facility where the inmates eat, and then after, excuse me, after the inmates are gone, he was sitting there eating and he had a heart attack. There was another number of other people that passed away, not at prison, but that was one of them. There's other people that had, gotten hurt, people who had gotten attacked by inmates, and I've been in a couple of small riots. So yeah, it just really wasn't a good, just really wasn't a good thing for me. So quitting was probably the best thing that I could do. Now I was retired military, but I wasn't an officer, so I didn't have the big officer retirement pay. So the wife was working at the time, I was working, we were putting off debt. To combine all the problems that we had even more. We had a failed real estate business with my family who defrauded the business hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm still owed like $80,000 to $100,000 of wages that weren't paid to me. They stole, like, we had a bunch of rental properties. They stole and used the deposit money, which is highly illegal. And then law enforcement came in. There was the problem with my stepdad, who was a sovereign citizen, and he didn't pay taxes or stuff. And then the IRS is knocking on his door. And again, they defrauded money from the company. So yeah, all of this was the perfect storm coming in, and it just wasn't good for me. So I ended up quitting, which was great. It was probably the best thing I could have done. And then that's when I got into upscale security. And then if you thought the military was bad, upscale security, even upscale security, regular security like security guards, and the majority of people are dumb as a bag of hammers. It's like no common sense. I've seen security guards put their hands and try to beat people up. I've seen security guards assault the employees of the business of where we worked. We're contracted to do security stuff, and this was during COVID, the time where I actually had to have papers, and I got stopped by police, and it's like, what are you doing driving around? Papers, please. Here's my papers. I have work. I am essential worker. Kind of like Schindler's List thing. But yeah, I saw staff assault employees of a client that we were working for. And it was just insane. It was the stupidest people I've ever seen. And that's coming from the US military. So that ought to tell you something. And then the last thing, so I did that. I took a break for a while after I quit Department of Corrections, and I did the upscale security thing, and had to bring in some money and stuff like that. Again, retirement was out of the picture, because it's like, look at our expenses, look at how much the expenses are going up every single year. And it was like, man, this just isn't going to end well. So doing the security business, then I had a gallbladder I had gallbladder problems. I had ulcer problems. I couldn't eat. I couldn't keep anything solid down. I was drinking protein powder mainly for meals, and my gallbladder was so bad that I had to go to the emergency room because I was doubled over in pain. And they said, yeah, you need to get your gallbladder out like tomorrow. So emergency surgery. The surgeon afterwards said, you had a buttload of stones and a necrotized gallbladder. And I'm like, that's a real technical way of putting it. And it was an Army doctor, and he's like, well, yeah, that's the Army. You know, since you're ex-Army, it's good that you got it done because you probably wouldn't have lasted. He was surprised that I was still walking around because of how inflamed it was. It was littered. The technical term that he used was littered with gallstones, and it was necrotizing. He goes, I'm surprised you didn't pass out. So yeah, we got that done. And then there was a story behind that because as I was working for this upscale security, it was actually G4S. For those of you who don't know, G4S is the largest security company in the world. And again, security companies, this is like, security people that you see at Walmart. And of course, during COVID, that all popped up, and security became, really important. And, put your face mask on, put your face diaper on. And it's like, that was just a weird time of COVID. It was like, you got to wear a mask, you got to be 6 feet apart. But if you sit at a table, you can take your mask off because the virus doesn't affect you if you're sitting at a table and eating as a family. And then the table next to you, they don't have their face diapers on. And so it was just kind of a crazy thing. So yeah. So I had this surgery, emergency surgery. As soon as I was in the emergency room and found out what was going on and that I needed surgery, I called my boss at G4S, my supervisor, told him that I was in the emergency room, that I'm getting surgery, and his thing was not, oh, what's wrong? Now, this guy was retired Air Force. I think he was, usually I hold the Air Force in high regard. My grandfather was in the Air Force. Actually, he's in the Army Air Corps, and then it became the Air Force. He did 40 years. But this guy must have been the bottom of the barrel Air Force guy. So no offense to the Air Force people out here, but this guy he was a bag of rocks. And he had a few pebbles missing as well. He didn't ask why I was in the emergency room, why I was getting emergency surgery. All he was concerned about, he was yelling at me on the phone, I got to redo the schedule. And of course, he couldn't do a schedule to save his life. You do a DA6 in the military, which is, it's simple instructions on how to make a duty roster, and boom, it's easy. Supposedly, he had been a supervisor and blah, blah, blah. And he had been in charge of security forces, which is like, yeah, right. He was lying his ass off. He couldn't even use a cell phone. He couldn't even use the navigation system on a cell phone. That's how, and he was kind of old. So he's yelling and screaming at the phone on me. And it's like, oh, I got to redo the schedule. And then he hangs up on me. And I'm like, well, that's it. I'm done with that job. Then he calls back. And he starts tearing into me again. I said, listen, if I don't get this surgery, I'm going to die. That's how it is. I'm sorry, but that's the way it is. I have to get the surgery. And I told him it would be 6 to 8 weeks of recovery time, which I did get the gallbladder surgery. There were complications. I had to go back and get a second surgery. So that was fun. But he's like, and I told him, this is how stupid he was. How he got into the Air Force, I'm not sure. Somebody must have taken the test for him. So I tell him, I get the surgery, and I'm going to be out for 6 to 8 weeks of recovery. I'm not going to be able to work. He's like, so, now this is on the weekend. So he's like, so you're not going to come to work on Monday? You can't come to work on Monday? Can you come in on Wednesday? And I'm like, what part of 6 to 8 weeks don't you understand where the doctor says no working? I will have stitches. I will, things need to heal when they remove organs from your body. And then there was an infection scare thing going on too. And he just couldn't get it. Let's see, Marie Phillip. Hi. If you're listening, I'm really struggling and Pakistan. The comment went away. I don't know. I'll have to read it later. Um, anyway, so yeah, he just couldn't get it, and he's like, "Well, when can you come back?" And I'm like, 8 weeks. And well, that's not going to work because I got to redo all the schedule and all this stuff. So he's being a pain in the ass. I said, you know what? You don't have to worry about it. He's like, really? And thinking that I'm going to just suddenly, not do the surgery. I'm going to come back to work, and message retracted. Something about Pakistan? That seems kind of weird, folks. I don't know. I wouldn't pay attention to that message, whatever it was. So anyway, it ends up, I told him, I said, don't worry about it. Everything's fine. And he's, oh, really, really? Getting his hopes up. Even though I'm double over in pain and I'm on fentanyl, I mean, they gave me some harsh, because I was in so much pain. I told him, I said, no, you don't have to worry about me because I quit. You can't quit. And I'm like, yeah, I can. Click. Hung up on him. He tries to call back. Ignore. Goes to voicemail. And then I blocked his number, and then that was the last time. It was like, yeah, I'm done. So after that surgery and all of the other things that we were dealing with ended up being the perfect storm, and it could have gone one of two ways. But thankfully, we had the surgery because I was planning some stuff that wouldn't be beneficial to my life. But thankfully, I quit. And having to get the surgery is what saved me, basically. So yeah, it was really a good thing that I got the surgery because that kind of woke me up. And then that was the thing that got me to go back to the VA and not take any bullshit, to put in more claims for my mental health and so on and so forth. PTSD, the gift that keeps on giving. Thank you, Uncle Sam, for that. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I got a pension. Yeah, I've got medical and all that stuff. But I also got all this other crap that's kind of like, I would trade that all in to be whole. But that's never going to be the case. So anyway, that was the thing that, the straw that broke the camel's back that showed me that I really needed to start to take care of myself. And so after the surgery and recovering from that, and then getting to the point of where, I need to, do the VA thing. I really need to press for that. I really need to file a bunch of stuff. I need to take care of my mental health. I had to get therapy and see doctors and therapists and the whole nine yards, counselors and so on and so forth. A lot of them I didn't like because they're VA, they're bottom of the barrel. And, but I was able to get that. And then as I was dreaming about retiring overseas, because it's like, maybe with my small military pension, we could go overseas somewhere, live in a grass hut or something and retire. But, that's not the lifestyle that we're accustomed to. And the other places just didn't click, like, Portugal or Europe, stuff like that. There's a lot of problems that I saw that were going to be popping up, which eventually came to pass. And, the big immigration problem, refugee problem overseas. And then we found out that Korea has a visa that would allow my wife, who was a Korean citizen, who became an American citizen, could return to Korea on a visa. And that was the F4 visa. So she could qualify for that. I could get the F1 visa, being a spouse of an F4 visa holder, and boom, we could come to Korea. So yeah, it was like a revelation at this might be doable. And so I started digging in. She started digging in, asking family members about prices and utilities and so on and so forth. And we found out that we would be paying about half of what we were paying in the United States. And we could probably get by off of my military retirement, maybe save 50, maybe $100. But with the choice of having to work in the United States and get some other type of job, which, what am I suited for? Security work, law enforcement, stuff like that. That just wasn't an option anymore because it was just killing me. So it was kind of like, okay. But then at the same time, I was going to the VA, I was getting my filing more claims and the stuff that I put off for decades. And I got a rating for that, and that came out pretty good. Um, it's a it's a it's a weird thing. It came out good, but it's bad because it came out good because I was so bad in the problems that I have. Um, I got chronic pain, I got PTSD, got mental issues, mental health issues, and other physical issues. I was in a helicopter crash, and just not good, not good. Mentally, physically, or whatever. So, but anyway, got a rating off of that, which gave us a little bit more money, and it was like, wow, this is entirely doable now. And since it was Korea, we knew that the wife, she had followed me around, in the military, and then after I retired from the military, in Colorado and stuff. Maybe we should go back to Korea. And so we had decided, yeah, we're going to go back to Korea. Terry says, I'm from U.S. Navy, and I've served this wonderful country for 35 years. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you very much. I did just over 20. And then after that, law enforcement and other stuff. But yeah, always good to see fellow veterans on the channel, and appreciate you serving. It's weird because when people tell me, "Oh, thank you for your service," I'm like, "Yeah, whatever, okay." But for other veterans, it's like I know the crap that we go through, so I do appreciate, and my heart goes out to other veterans. Which, by the way, after I quit the Department of Corrections job, I actually went back to the prison, and I did prison ministry for a few years after that because of the veterans that I had gotten to know while I was working in the prison. I had inmate crews that worked for me, going around doing different stuff, and so there was some stuff that they couldn't help me out with, but had inmate work crews. Some of them were veterans. There was a lot of good people there that were struggling with PTSD, and so kind of had an affinity to them. My real dad was in prison, and he died in prison. He had like 2009 years for the murder he committed, and that was kind of a crazy, wild thing that went on there. But I didn't get to see him before he died. But the other veterans in prison, I'd grown an affinity with them, and did prison ministry for a couple years after that. So while I left the prison, I immediately turned around and I put in, and I was able to become a volunteer and did prison ministry in 2 prisons, for Territorial Correctional Facility and Fremont Correctional Facility. So that was really, really good. A lot of the guys, when I showed up to do the prison ministry thing, there was guys like, I couldn't believe it. I heard the rumor said you quit, and then now you're back in prison ministry. And so a bunch of guys came in, and it was really good. It was really good, helping guys out, just being there, because a lot of them don't have anybody. And a lot of them understand they made bad choices. Hands down, they just screwed the pooch, and they were doing their time. But they also realized, at least the veterans that had PTSD, realized that, hey, you need to get help. So that was kind of a good thing. So anyway, fast forward back to the time of where, I had quit working, and we found out that coming to Korea was absolutely an option. But I was kind of worried. It's like, well, some countries have retirement visas, and you have to have a huge deposit, like Malaysia. You end up in Malaysia, you got to have like 150,000, deposit or whatever. I didn't have that kind of money. We had paid off our house, but yeah, it was like, yeah, we don't have that money readily available. But Korea didn't have a deposit because it's not essentially a retirement thing. It's Koreans returning to Korea, so there was no deposit required. So even though they don't have a retirement visa for normal people like you and me, it worked out for us. So it was pretty good. Terry says, I have an F5 visa. Oh, you're one of those. That is the pinnacle visa that everybody wants. I have the F1. My wife has F4. The F5, I think it's the F513 visa, is where it's good for like 10 years and you're a permanent resident, you can vote, you can do all that stuff. That is the pinnacle. But there are some qualifications, and you have to, income wise, you have to meet like twice the GNI of Korea, which is about $72,000, $73,000 right now, depending on the exchange rate. So you got to have that in pension and income and so on and so forth. So I'm short on that. So congratulations on you getting that visa. I know a few other people that does. No, it's good forever. Oh yeah, it's good. Oh, I misspoke. Every 10 years you have to redo your fingerprints, is what our immigration lawyer told us. But yeah, you're a permanent resident. You're done. It's a done deal. You just have to let them know you're alive and give them your fingerprints every 10 years or something like that, and boom, you're done. So I don't make enough money for that yet. But when we get back from Hanoi, we're doing a trip to Vietnam. We're going to Hanoi and we're going to Sapa. We're going to spend 10 or 12 days, something like that. Do a vacation, and then we'll go to Sapa and Franzipan and stuff like that. So that should be a pretty cool trip. But when we get back, probably later this year, we're going to be purchasing an apartment, renting it out, and so that'll bring in some money. So we'll be a little bit closer to being able to hit that income bracket for the F5 visa. And he said, I did this 20 years ago. Wow, holy crow. So you're the original OG here in Korea. Wow. I know a couple other people that did the F513 visa, and it took like 9 or 10 months to get approved. So, you're 67. Okay, that's not bad. That's not bad at all. Not bad at all. Wow, 20 years. So that type of visa is, yeah, good forever. Just got to update your fingerprints and let them know you're still alive or whatever. But basically, you're a permanent resident, so that you can vote. There's certain other benefits that you can get, like a buddy that I know who has an F5 visa. He actually was able to put in, and he got solar panels for his place out into the country. It was dirt cheap because he was a permanent resident. For somebody like me, I wouldn't be able to do that. So yeah, there's some bennies to that F5. And the F5, the cool thing is, yeah, you're done. Me, every 2 to 3 years, I think it's like every 3 years, I have to redo my visa, or for a total of, 5 years? It's like a 5-year visa, but you have to do like 2 years or a total of 5. It's split up, and it's where you have to renew. But then after the 5 years, you have to do a full renewal. So you have to totally redo the F1 visa. And the wife is the same thing. She gets that, and after that term, she has to redo the entire application. So we're sticking with that right now. But when we buy an apartment, we rent that out, and it's either going to be here in Brownstone, or it's going to be in Asan, e.g. the One. Which is in Asan Technical Valley, which has a lot of big rental place as well for military and contractors. So that'll get us a little bit closer towards the income level for the F5 visa. And then I think when I hit 62, if we don't reach it then, because a few years, of course you got pension increases and so on and so forth, VA disability increases, cost of living and stuff like that. I might be able to make it, but at least it's 62. My children are now trying for the F5. My son can get it because he studied chemical engineering. Ooh, awesome. Congrats. That'd be wild. That's the first. But yeah, it is going to be pretty interesting because we will be so close, depending on the rents. And of course, rent prices go up. So there's that cost of living that will put us a little bit closer to be able to hit that 2 times the GNI. So, but if I don't make it then, I'll at least make it when I'm 62. I'm 59 this year. So, a couple more years, we'll eventually get there, and I'll get that F5 visa. So, especially if we get the apartment and rent that out, that will be the tipping point. Because with my Social Security at 62, that won't be enough. Getting the apartment, probably won't get me there, but with both of them it would. Says my daughter will get it because she makes a lot of money. That's always good. Congratulations. Sounds like your family's doing great. We have a daughter. Let's see. I got it because I had money. Awesome. Great. Yeah, that works out great. We've got a kid. We have a daughter, and she's a doctor, and she's serving in the military right now. So she's not making a lot of money, but they paid for her medical school. So 3, 4, 500,000, whatever that ends up being. They paid for her medical school, gave her a living stipend of like 2,000 a month or whatever, and then she had to give 8 years back to the military. So she's looking right now, even though we're at Camp Humphreys, and it is the largest overseas base in the world for the U.S. military, the hospital is a little lacking. So she's thinking about, and she gets some bonuses. She's a captain. But she's like, I could go to the civilian route, make way more money, and she doesn't have any student loans. So, those would be all paid off after she does her 8 years, and it's a done deal, and she'd be good to go. So, and then she could go into the civilian world, and she's got her own personal life, and she met somebody, and they're planning on, doing their thing. So, they're going to be set. But her significant other is going for his PhD. He wants to be a college professor. She'll be a doctor, a pediatrician, and it's kind of she's heading in the right direction. So we're happy. We only have the one, so she turned out good. So the story is we got a good one. We're not going to do anymore. So that's how that worked out. Takes over my wife in regards to intelligence and smarts. And then she got my height, and there's that. So, fun stuff. So anyway, it ends up we put in for the F4 and F1 visa, and we got that, and we came and retired, and had a good time, and it's been good ever since. The question is, would you ever return to the United States? Not planning on it. Hey, hon. How was it? Good, good. I'm just in the kitchen, so if you want to walk by, you won't be on camera. Okay. The wife doesn't like being on camera. Do you, sweetie? No. You're not particularly a camera person? No. Not a public camera person. No. If it's just me and her and pictures, selfies, we're good on that. So how was the class? Good? Good. So, but other than that, coming here, back to the question, would we ever come back to the United States? I'm not planning on it. I don't have any ties. I don't, I've got family, but we're, what's the word? I don't want to say disenfranchised, but that's basically it. It's like, good for you. I would never go back to the U.S. Asia, Korea is so great. I would. For me to go back to the United States, there would have to be a huge monumental change. I mean, I've got family, but we're not talking, and it's not on my end. Of course, you have got to take my word for it. You talk to the other family members, you get a different story, but. Basically it's like, there's nothing there in the United States to keep us there. There's not like family or anything. It's like, boom, we're done. I'm done with the United States. So living here in Korea, we are planning to go to the Philippines though. So we're going to Vietnam in like 10 days or so. We'll do a vacation. We come back. It'll be cold and wintry, I love it because I don't like the hot Korean summers. And then January or February, I think we're going to plan to go to the Philippines, and we're going to put in for a retirement visa there, the SRRV courtesy visa for military. There's a little bit of a deposit involved in that, but we're using that as a backup to Korea just in case. So we'll see. Insurance was too expensive in the U.S. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that's too expensive in the U.S. Matter of fact, I was chatting with a guy the other day talking about expenses, and he was asking me, how much are your expenses? And it's like, well, they're half of what they were in the United States. You know, our property tax in the United States back then was going up a minimum of $100 per year. You know, and you start doing the math and you're saying, okay, well, property tax is $2,300 a year and it goes up $100 every year. And you project out to when you're going to retire and you're like, holy crap, I don't know if I'm going to be able to afford, you know, property tax. And then the same thing with electricity and gas and water and trash and all of those things. The huge increases or the big increases that we would see were really, really rough. And when you come to Korea, you know, those you still have increases, but they're not as huge. And so that was kind of a big draw there. So I think our property tax here in Korea is like what, $250 a year for our 4-bedroom, 2-bath apartment here. Is that what our property tax is, hun? About $250?
Just one sec. Give me one sec.
Yeah, it's something like that. Where the property tax in the United States was like $2,300 a year. I think we pay like $20 a month or whatever. You know, if you had to do it as a monthly expense. Yeah, don't worry about it, hon. I think it's somewhere around there.
$340.
Oh, 340. So, excuse me. So yeah, it's not bad compared to the United States. And then the gas and the water and the internet. Um, you know, our cell phones are half of what they were in the United States. You know, for unlimited coverage and service and all that. So expense-wise, it's way better. There's still some things that are expensive, like food prices going up, but that's kind of everywhere because of the war in Ukraine and stuff like that. Bad economy here in Korea, so you got some price increases. But a lot of countries are having some bad economy problems. So, yeah, it is what it is. But overseas, at least it's less than what it was in the United States. So, and again, like I said, there was rising crime rates, the whole 9 yards. It just, and try to go someplace where there's not rising crime. Yeah, it's you know, you can go somewhere for a while, and then over time, with the policies that that state or city government make that are not conducive to a good crime-free society, yeah, you're going to have more crime. Imagine that. Uh, Immigration policies and things like that. There are certain things I don't agree with because unchecked immigration leads to more crime, and so yeah, there's a reason that you should have some strict, you know, rules and regulations and standards that you need to adhere to before you let somebody into the country. You know, borders are important. As an independent, that's just my 2 cents. You know, I do good ideas for both sides, but yeah, but Korea is basically crime free. Yeah, we got crime here and stuff like that, but we have never felt unsafe here in Korea. At least I haven't. You know, it's just, and I've been in bad parts and you know bars and stuff like that before I got married, but I never felt unsafe. So take it for what it's worth. Either I'm an idiot and clueless, or you know, there's something to be said for the lack of crime here in Korea. Which brings to the fact that Korean people are more respectful, they're more civil, they're more mature. Yeah, you still get some knuckleheads every once in a while, but for the most part, as a whole, I think Koreans are more respectful than what we experienced in the United States. I've lived in California, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, Washington, Tennessee. Where else? Yeah, California. I mentioned that. I think that's it. Alabama. Yeah, mentioned that. So, yeah, it just too many problems. Not as many problems here. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, not planning on going back to the United States. Definitely not going to do that. That is not on the horizon. That's not what I'm planning to do. So yeah, I mean, I still appreciate the United States. I'm still an American citizen. Still believe in freedom of speech, the Second Amendment, all of the amendments, all that stuff. Uh, you know, the republic, our government being a republic, you got to have rules and laws to govern the people, but the government shouldn't overreach and so on and so forth. Yeah, kind of a common sense approach. So yeah, there's that. But yeah, being here in Korea is pretty good. We enjoy it. And again, we're going to be taking a trip soon to Vietnam, so that'll be fun. And yeah, some good stuff. So that's what we got going on. The morning coffee talk here in Korea, or the morning latte talk, I guess I should say. So, but what I found is like other people that have seen my videos and they've come to Korea and come to retire pretty much are kind of in the same boat. Kind of have the same ideology for the most part, same type of background experiences. People aren't too concerned about, well, I don't have a big social life, so coming to Korea or a foreign country isn't that bad. Some people, their lives revolve around having a big social circle. And here in Korea or overseas, it's harder to do that. I think more in Korea than in other countries because, like the Philippines has, they teach English in their schools, and there's, it's not as hard to communicate as here in Korea. And so, or Thailand, usually have big hubs of expat retiree destinations, and so there's a big circle of people. So in Korea, it's a little bit different because there's not as many of us as there is in those other countries. So yeah, we're kind of the minority. It's a little tiny niche that we jumped into here. So, but I don't mind it. I don't mind it. I know a few people at the gym and wave high and fist bump or whatever, but a couple of people that we hang out with every once in a while, and yeah, it's fine. Works out pretty good. So yeah, there's that. That's what we end up doing. Other than that, life is good. Life is good. Definitely. Yeah. I remember somebody contacted me and got into an argument with me saying, oh, I should have waited until I was 65 or 67. And this person's whole thing was mathematically, you're going to lose a bunch of money on your investments. And it's like, well, yeah, because I'm not working and I'm not putting money away into those investment vehicles or not getting matched by the state or whatever. And it's like, yeah, that's obvious. But if I had kept working what I was doing, I probably wouldn't have been around to enjoy that. So, yeah, not everything has to make mathematical sense. It has to make sense here. Yeah, it's, I think this is the same guy that was arguing with me about paying off debt. And his thing was pay off the highest interest. Like if you have a credit card, it's like 20%, and then you have a credit card that has 5%. He was arguing you got to pay off the highest interest. And it's like, I'm like, pay off the credit card with the lowest amount and knock that off. And then, kind of the Dave Ramsey thing. He was arguing about that. And it's like, it doesn't matter. The little bit of money that is going to, you lose is made up for in the motivation and seeing those small victories as you pay the smaller cards off, pay off the smaller debts, and then roll that money for those and put it into the next one. So you kind of snowball that payment of debts. I'm not saying that paying off the highest interest rate is wrong. You can go ahead and do that, but you're not going to get that gratification of being able to knock out those smaller bills. Like if you had a credit card that had $1,000 on it and it was only at 5%, and then you're paying off like a $30,000 or $40,000 credit card bill and it's at 20%, how long is it going to take to knock that out? It's going to take a long time. So just knock out the smaller credit card, boom, even though it has a lower interest rate, and then throw the rest on to the next bigger card. So just seems that's what clicked for us. So I'm not saying that the other way is wrong. You do what is right for you. But yeah, he was arguing all in my stuff. And it was like, listen, and the funny thing was, this guy wasn't debt free. So, and I was debt free. So it's kind of like, okay, yeah. Let's see, my house will be paid off this month and I get to pay rent to the state in property taxes. I know, right? Property tax is horrible. I think if you pay off your property, you shouldn't have to pay property tax. There shouldn't be property tax to begin with. That's a whole shill thing going on. Imagine working your whole life and paying off your property, and then you see the countless stories of seniors who lost their property because they didn't pay a water bill, or property tax didn't get paid and it was missed for some unforeseen reason or some mistake on the state or even on the individual, and then the house is sold out from under them and they paid off the entire property, and it's like pennies on the dollar. So, I think that's kind of underhanded. That's the opposite of what government should be. So, yeah, I'm not a fan of property tax, and I'm not a fan of taxing Social Security, which, by the way, the last administration, Biden, he was one of the guys that voted to tax Social Security. So, yeah, I wasn't a big fan of him. But yeah, once you hit Social Security, you shouldn't have to pay taxes on it because you've already paid taxes. So you're just getting taxed twice, and that's kind of stupid. It's a money grab, and yeah, hopefully we'll get rid of that, but I don't know. Keep your fingers crossed. I'm not going to hold my breath. I think once you pay off your property, your primary residence, and then once you get your Social Security, you shouldn't have to pay tax, period. Or at least, if it's like 150,000 or below, you shouldn't have to pay. No, I take that back. If you get Social Security, you shouldn't have to pay tax. That's it, done deal. If I was king for a day, but yeah, interesting stuff. So anyway, that's the morning latte talk that we got going on. It's getting a little tepid, so I got to cut this off, and we got some stuff that we need to do. But be sure to like and subscribe to the channel. I would really appreciate that. I'll kind of put it in the description box a little bit later. I've got a link for Buy Me Coffee because I love coffee. But the best thing that you could do is like and subscribe to the channel. That I would really appreciate. So for all the other veterans out there and the other people, thanks for watching. Appreciate it. Stand by. I do other retired in Korea videos. I've got playlists. You can go check those out. Kind of documents our journey of retiring here in Korea, and we kind of continue on every once in a while. And then I got some hobby videos: resin printing, FDM 3D printing, laser engraving, painting miniatures. Need something to do besides going to the gym, and so I picked up a new hobby and do that stuff there. So with that, appreciate all the veterans out there and everybody else who's watching. Thank you. I really do appreciate it. And with that said, I'm going to finish this up, but I'm going to let you go, and we're going to go, and that'll be it. All right. We'll see you on the next video. Peace. Yes, I'm sure.